Brightburn was directed by David Yarovesky and stars Elizabeth Banks and David Denman and tells the story of a young boy that crash lands on a farm. And the couple that runs the farm was trying to have a child and they weren't able to, and so when this baby lands on their farm in a spaceship, they decide this is perfect and they raise the kid as their own. But as the kid gets older, he begins to display powers and abilities that at first are fascinating but quickly turn to evil. The script is written by Brian and Mark Gunn and produced by James Gunn. So clearly these guys know each other and they got together and they made a movie. And that's awesome because this movie has a unique twist to it. If I were pitching this movie to a studio, like if I wrote it, I would say it's Chronicle meets Superman. It's evil Superman. Give me monies. Because studios love their comps. They want to know what's been made that resembles what you want to make. Meaning that you can't actually make anything original. So that's that. That's the end of the review, and I'll talk to you guys later. So basically the movie is saying, what if everything in the Superman comic happened, except instead of becoming a force for justice and good, this kid's like, yeah, no, I'm gonna murder you. Which is a good idea that mostly pays off in a really tight and compact horror movie. It's pretty bloody too. I was impressed with some of the kills in the movie that took me off guard. I didn't really know what the movie was rated going in. I wasn't sure if it was PG-13 or R. Definitely an R-rated movie, and there's a scene where it for sure becomes rated R, and you're like, yep, that's good. You went for it. You didn't back off. Good job. One of the reasons this movie really worked for me were the two main performances of the parents, played by Elizabeth Banks and David Denman. They had excellent chemistry together. I completely bought their relationship. They felt like they had been through a lot. There was so much that they gave to the role that wasn't necessarily even on the page. Just these subtle nuances between the two. And Elizabeth Banks as this woman who just desperately wanted to be a mother but wasn't able to and had this amazing opportunity. You can feel the desperation and the struggle in everything that she does. In some movies where you see a parent that's very oblivious to how terrible their child is, you start to feel kind of annoyed with the parent, like, come on. But as someone who worked for a school system for a couple years, way before I ever started doing this, I can tell you the majority of parents never believe their children do anything wrong. They have a really hard time accepting that. It's very true. But in this movie, certain things are presented to Elizabeth Banks' character, like, hello, like, your kid's obviously got issues. And instead of being annoyed with the fact that she doesn't want to accept it, I felt for her because they do such a good job at setting up how she and her husband are so grateful to be parents because they were given this chance. And so once it becomes apparent that problems are happening, the breakdown of that family was what made this movie work so well for me. Yeah, there's some cool, really fucked up deaths and, you know, like a twist of the superhero formula. But that to me was sort of like the icing on the cake. At the core of this movie, what made it work for me were two parents grateful to have a child, slowly realizing that it's a giant mistake and having to come to terms with that. I love that part of the movie, and they nailed it. Also, a major plus with Brightburn is that it looks way more expensive than it was. When my friend and I left the theater, we were like, what do you think that was shot for? Maybe like $20 million? We looked on IMDb, and it's listed as a $7 million budget. So the stuff they were able to pull off, I'm very impressed with. It seems like they had a tight-knit crew of people who are willing to work extra hard on this movie, and that could come from James Gunn being the producer, because one of the reasons that Slither is behind me right now is because he directed that film. It's a really fun horror film, check it out, but Elizabeth Banks is also in that movie. And it was inspiring purely from a production standpoint to see how much they were able to do with that smaller budget. That's something that I am trying to learn a lot about right now, about how to stretch a budget to its limits. And this is a good example of that. Still, there are some elements of the movie that frustrated me, and it's a different type of frustration. When I see a film like this, I'm pulling for it. I'm kind of rooting for it. And there are things that I wish could have been better because I'm hoping that they do a great job with this movie. And so as I watch the film, I'm seeing missed opportunities, which is frustrating, but it's not maddening. Like, wow, they really fucked that up. It's more like, oh, what if you had just done this thing differently here? That would have really helped your film. For instance, the opening scene of the film is the ship crash landing in the farm. And so you know right off the bat, okay, the kid's an alien. Now, if this were, say, a spec script, which if you don't know what a spec script is, it's an unsolicited script. Someone who's a writer, they write a script and they're hoping to get it made. I doubt this was a spec script because the people who wrote it are related to James Gunn, and that's instantly like an amazing connection to get your film through a lot more doors than if you were just an average Joe. Disclaimer though, I don't know the full history of the Brightburn script, but I'm assuming that more than likely they wrote it with the goal of getting it made from the very beginning. If this were a spec script though, what a spec writer wants to do is they want to impress you hardcore because they are pulling out all the stops to make their script as best as they can possibly make it so they can get people's attention. In that case, I would not have opened this movie with the spaceship crashing because you instantly give away that secret from the very beginning. I would have had the movie play the way it does, but without that opening scene. Because you got this kid drawn to the barn. Something in the barn is calling him. He's trying to open the door. There's this glow behind the barn, and you're wondering, what the hell is back there? Holy shit, he's eating his breakfast, and he just broke the fork off in his mouth. What the fuck is going on in this movie? Like, there's so much they could do if they didn't give away right from the beginning the kid's an alien. And I feel like if this were a spec script, they could have explored that a lot more, and it would have been sort of like a mid-film twist that could have brought something really interesting to the table. But instead, we know right off the bat, kid's an alien, so it kind of takes away the mystery. But I would say my biggest issue with the movie is that it does feel rushed. A lot happens in a span of about 91 minutes. It's very quick. And a lot of development and a lot of emotional changing has to occur in a short span of time, while also setting up a plot and trying to explain a backstory about where this kid is from or what exactly is controlling him, which is also an issue. You're not entirely sure what the kid's motivation is, because there's times in the movie where he expresses that he wants to be good, but you don't really get a chance to see him attempting to be good. There's just many scenes in which he does horrific things, but you don't really see a struggle within him between good and evil. It seems like one day he just wakes up and something's in the barn, and all of a sudden he's like called to be evil. So I think if the rules of whatever's going on within this kid and the thing in the barn and whatever his goals are were just a little more clear, the film could have been better. And if they didn't necessarily give away the secret in the opening scene, they could have played with the audience a lot more and done things to toy with our expectations. But I think overall, this is an enjoyable horror movie. And it is definitely a horror movie. Because once the kid is active, so to speak, it kind of becomes a slasher film, which I liked. I'm going to give Brightburn a B. Guys, thank you so much as always for watching. Look forward to more reviews very soon. And as always, if you like this, you can click right here and get Stuckmanized.